Hi, 5th grade, it's Mrs. Maldonado. Thanks for tuning in. This math lesson is for the week of May 25th. It's lesson 21, and the objective is all about ideas with multiplication as scaling. So what I need you to do is I need you to pause the video and grab a pencil and a piece of paper so that you can try a few problems with me and one on your own. So first, let's take a look at some of the multiplication scaling rules. So all this means is if I'm multiplying by a fraction, my product, which means the answer, is either going to get greater, it's going to get less, or it's going to stay the same. So this is a really good reference for you too if you're doing your work for this lesson on scrap paper. You can always go back to this video, you can pause it, you can write down these rules if you need them in front of you to help you remember what we did in class. I had this on a very large anchor chart in the back of the room. Rule number 1, when you multiply a fraction by a value less than a whole, the product will be less. So your answer is going to go down. For example, if I multiplied 3/4 and 1/2, the product, the answer is going to be less than 3/4. So because 1/2 is less than a whole, when I multiply that by 3/4, my answer is going to shrink. It's going to get smaller because a half is less than a whole. Rule number 2, when you multiply a fraction by a value greater than a whole, your product will get greater. It's going to get bigger, okay? An example is if I multiplied 5/6 and 9/5. Do you remember what kind of fraction 9/5 is? That's right, it's an improper fraction because my numerator on top is greater. So my product is going to be greater than what I started with. So my answer, if I multiply these two, is going to be larger. 9/5 is greater than a whole. So if I multiply that by 5/6, my answer will go up. It's going to increase. Finally, rule number 3. When you multiply a fraction by a value equivalent to a whole, the product will be the same. So if my fraction equals a whole, the fraction that I started with before I multiplied is going to stay the same. An example of that is if I multiplied 3/5 and 4/4. 4/4 is one whole. It's the same thing as saying 3/5 times one whole. So my product, my answer, is going to be the same. It's going to stay 3/5. All right, now let's try a few problems together. First problem, use the fractions 2/2, 3/4, and 5/3 to complete the statements. All right, so let's take a look. So here we have blank times 5 is going to be less than 5 wholes. So I need a fraction here that if I multiply it by 5 wholes, it's going to be smaller than 5 wholes. So I have 2/2, 3/4, and 5/3. Okay, so again, if my answer to this side is going to be smaller than 5 wholes, I know, according to my rules, that it needs to be less than a whole. So I need to find a fraction up here that's less than a whole, that if I multiply it by 5, it would be less than 5 wholes. Can you find it? I hope you said 3/4. 3/4 is less than a whole. So here, let's put 3/4 here. 3/4. 3/4 times 5 is going to be less than 5 wholes. Check. Let's get rid of it. I always like to get rid of it once I've used it. All right, down here. Equal to, okay. Which fraction times 5 equals 5? So I need it to be the same value. So I know 1 times 5 equals 5. Obviously, right? 1 whole times 5. So that would mean if I look up top, which fraction here is equivalent or equal to 1 whole? Can you find it? That's correct. 2 halves. Remember, when your numerator and denominator are the same, it is equivalent to 1 whole. 2 halves would go here. That's like saying 1 whole times 5 equals 5. Boom. So I just want to make sure the last one makes sense. 5/3. Okay. Again, improper fraction. 5/3 is more than a whole. 5/3 as a mixed number. Do you know what that would be? You worked really hard on that this year. 3 can go into 5 one time, and there would be 2/3 left over. You can also do that by taking out 3/3 as a whole, and you would have 2/3 left over. So I know it's more than a whole. So again, according to the scaling rules, if I multiply by a fraction greater than a whole, my product is going to go up. So it's going to be greater than 5 wholes. So that would go here. Okay? So you're really applying those 3 rules from the second slide. And is my answer going to go up? Is my answer going to go down? Is it going to stay the same? Let's try one more together. Okay, this problem says analyze. This word is analyze. Use reasoning, use your noggin, to order the following expressions from least to greatest. All right, so I need to order least to greatest. Do not calculate. Use those fancy words. Do not calculate any of the products and explain your reasoning. All right, so I know they want us to order the expressions, least to greatest. That means smallest to biggest. Do not calculate means they don't really want you to solve. They don't really want you to multiply the numbers. Okay? Calculate, fancy word for solve it. They want you to use your reasoning, the scaling rules, okay? And just order them. So let's take a look. Let's start with identifying the fraction that is less than a whole. 7/9, 12/11, or 50/50. Okay, so I have 3 different fractions here. But what I do know is that the second factor is the same, 348,980. It stays the same in all 3 expressions. So that tells me I'm looking at the first factor, and that is the fraction. So I know this fraction here, this fraction is less than a whole. 7/9, because 9/9 is 1 whole. So 7/9 on a number line would be 2/9 before that. I know that 12/11 is an improper fraction. 11/11 is 1 whole. So 12/11 is 1/11 over. So this is more than a whole. And I know 50/50, even though it seems humongous, is equal to 1 whole. All right, so first I want to make sense out of the problem. And now I'm just going to put them in order. I'm just going to number them. So I know the least is the smallest. I know that the smallest one here would be this expression, because 7/9 is less than a whole. And because it's less than a whole, according to my rules, my second factor here would shrink. It's going to get smaller because 7/9 is less than a whole. Now, the next one. So now I need the next smallest if I'm going least to greatest. I know this is an improper fraction, which is going to make my product go up because it's more than a whole. I know 50/50th is the same thing as saying what? One whole. Same thing as one whole. So this, I could even put a big 1 right over it. Right? Same thing. One whole. So I know that 348,980 is going to stay the same, right? That's going to stay the same. So I know that one would come next. Okay? And the greatest one here is going to be the one that is an improper fraction, because 12/11 is greater than a whole, which makes my product increase and go up. Okay? So if I put them in order least to greatest, this would go first, then this expression, and then finally this expression. Okay? Awesome. Guess what time it is? It's time for you to try one on your own. Okay. I want you to, this is a thinking question. So what I want you to do is I'm going to read it to you and I want you to really think about it. I want you to pause the video and I want you to solve it on your own. I want you to think about the 3 rules of scaling. Write your response, and then when you're done, hit play, and I'll show you what I came up with. All right. Math journal. How does 4/4 times 8/5 compare to 8/5? Explain your reasoning. Okay, so pause the video and try it out. Trying to get the text box. My apologies. All right. I hope you tried it out, and I hope you had time to think about the problem. So now let's talk about it. The first thing I notice here is I'm comparing this expression to just this fraction. So I know right away that 4/4 is equal to 1 whole. So first I'm going to write that down. I know that 4/4 is equivalent to 1 whole. Again, whenever it says explain, you always want to try to use your math vocabulary. You want to show how smart you are. So I know that 4/4 is equivalent to a whole. If I multiplied 4/4 by 8/5, my product would be, do you know what it would be? 8/5. It would stay the same. 8/5 would stay the same because I am multiplying by 1. So both values are the same. just going to go back and reread it. How does 4/4 times 8/5 compare to 8/5? Explain your reasoning. I know that 4/4 is equivalent to 1 whole. So if I multiplied 4/4 by 8/5, my product would be 8/5. 8/5 would be the same because I'm multiplying by 1. So both values are the same. Okay? My product wouldn't increase, it wouldn't decrease, it stays the same. So I hope this video really helped you. Mini lesson on a review of scaling. Again, if you get stuck during your workbook pages or anything during this lesson, I would definitely go back to the slide on this video and just pause it. If you pause it and keep it there, you could either write down the rules in your notebook or just look at it as a reference to help you. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me. I can be reached by Dojo, email, and now Teams. So thanks for tuning in. Stay healthy, stay busy, and keep practicing math every single day. Bye for now.